Joining me on the programme, Rupa Huq, the Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton. Good morning, Rupa. Thanks for joining us today. So, the phrase being used, it's a cliche. However, to many people, it's the right one for this occasion, kicking this matter into the long grass, or indeed trying to do so. Would you say that's what's going on here?
Very much so. I mean, this is a story that's been rumbling on since we first heard of it in November last year. And originally it was just one party. And then now we know there's been multiple, I think 16 separate events being investigated by the Met Police. We've seen pictures of them, the ones in the garden. There are worse pictures still to come, I believe. And so they're just prolonging the agony, really. We know that the Metropolitan Police has already criminally sanctioned Boris Johnson, Carrie Johnson, and the Chancellor. We know the interim Sue Gray report has concluded that there was a lack of leadership at number 10, that there was a workplace with excessive culture of alcohol. It's not normal in any other workplace. Certainly in a pandemic, when we had a strict lockdown, people were scared to leave the house. Do you remember you had to queue to go to the supermarket? The streets were deserted. And meanwhile, they're partying every day with these booze-fueled things. Some of the details really lurid. It looks like they want to prolong this until after the local government elections, because all the projections are showing there'll be an embarrassing loss of seats for them. So, they want to prolong it forever. There's an old phrase that let sunlight be the best disinfectant. So let's get this out in the open, have a proper parliamentary inquiry. And the vote today is only, it's not going to sort of hang, draw and quarter him on the spot. It's just to see if there's a case to investigate whether he misled Parliament. I mean, it's pretty mild.
And yet you may have seen the Daily Mail today, pages 8 and 9. They call it the House of Hypocrites, and they choose various different ministers and MPs, but one of them is Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, and they say the accusation: if the Prime Minister had any respect for the millions who sacrificed everything to follow the rules, he would resign. But he will not, because he does not respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame. This is Sir Keir Starmer speaking. And then the Daily Mail says the hypocrisy, and there is a photograph of this. He says, back in April 2021, Starmer was pictured drinking a bottle of beer in a Durham constituency office with other Labour campaigners. He argued, and I quote, "It was perfectly lawful to meet for work," and added, "No party, no breach of the rules." He is now calling for the Prime Minister to resign for a remarkably similar sounding incident, although Durham police decided no offence had been committed. And there is a picture of him with a bottle of beer with other workers after work. And so you might think, he was lucky to pretty much get away with it, Sir Keir Starmer, yet his righteous indignation is hypocritical.
I mean, look, there's no equivalence there. This is 16 separate episodes. Remember, there was a Christmas quiz, there was one in the garden, there were various different ones. There were suitcases of booze being wheeled down Whitehall the day before the Queen sat alone, mourning Prince Philip, her lifetime partner. There's no equivalence at all. And the police, as you say, found there was no case to answer. There's a grainy picture of two people in an office having a pizza. That's just their dead cat strategy. And the Conservatives are throwing everything at this. The Rwanda policy they've suddenly made up to offshore on a one-way ticket asylum seekers, when this country's got a rich and proud tradition of people wanting to seek asylum from deadly conditions. The privatisation of Channel 4, the funding arrangement to slash the BBC licence fee. This is all stuff that was never in their manifesto. That's all a huge distraction. And, this story that they found, the grainy picture, is another one of these things. The list goes on.
It doesn't matter if it's a grainy picture, does it? And to many people, it doesn't matter if it's one beer and one pizza or one sausage roll or a secret Santa. None of it matters. The point of it is to be part of the ruling class, is to be head of one of the major political parties in this country, and to be doing something that you're not allowed to do, and that all of the people that you're championing in your conversation were not allowed to do, which is meet with colleagues, pals, chums, family members, beloved relatives who were dying, and have exactly what Sir Keir Starmer's doing in that picture, grainy or otherwise, which is a beer and pizza, which is exactly what you're not supposed to be doing, isn't it?
Well, look, Vanessa, the Sue Gray report, the interim findings of it say that there was a sustained pattern. So it's not a one-off. So, yeah, there's been a £50 fine for the birthday cake episode, but there's much worse than that to come. And so they want to prolong this so that, there's a lot worse to come. I questioned him yesterday, and the quote I read out to him was his own words from the Telegraph in 2011, a column he wrote: "When a regime has been in power too long, when it's fatally exhausted the patience of the people, when oblivion finally beckons across the world, that regime is acting solely in the interest of self-preservation, not in the interest of the electorate. And that is what's happened here. They've been in since 2010. They're clinging to power. They've got this entitled sense of arrogance. And yeah, I asked Johnson a question yesterday and the day before. He's reciting the word sorry. You know, there's a killer song, Smile Like You Mean It. We know that behind closed doors, he jokes and laughs about it. And, you know, they will find any type of distraction. Actually, the Ukraine war has been fortunate for them as well. They're thinking everyone's forgotten about this. They haven't. I go out on doorsteps every day of the week, and people are hopping mad, and rightly so. They made enormous sacrifices. People couldn't be with dying relatives. Grandparents couldn't hold newborn babies, all sorts. And this lot were laughing in our faces the whole time, and they still are. And, you know, decent Tories, I'd appeal to them if any of those are listening. I've got good Conservative friends across the aisle. Just listen to their conscience. Listen to what the electorate is saying. Every single opinion poll. People think this man is past his sell-by date. Let's at least have that investigation. Did he lie to Parliament? That's a really serious offence. In earlier times, that would be a resigning matter. But this bloke, you know, they call him Houdini. I think David Cameron called him a greased piglet. He manages to get out of any fix. His time should be running out.
I mean, even, you know, your former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, is cited here in the Daily Mail as a hypocrite. They say the accusation Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak have been fined for police for breaking the law. They should be held to account. That's what Jeremy Corbyn said. Then they say the hypocrisy. Corbyn was pictured breaking the rule of 6 at a dinner party in London in September 2020. Scotland Yard decided he would not be fined, saying police would not retrospectively enforce coronavirus laws, which is exactly what's happening now to the government. In February last year, he was spotted in a group of 12. Corbyn spokesman said he'd been at a funeral, but he was not socially distancing or wearing a mask when the rule of 6 was still in place. I mean, there are some people who adhered in every single particular to the rules. And to me, that makes absolute sense, because in my case, I didn't want to catch it and I didn't want to give it to anyone else. I didn't want to break the rules. I wasn't tempted to. I didn't want to go to a rave. I didn't fancy, cohabiting with my family and infecting them or getting it from them and dying. I didn't want to break the rules. But there are people who did break them, bend them, tweak them, twiddle about with them. And is it those people, or are some of the people now volleying this absolutely righteous criticism at the Prime Minister? These people, and the Daily Mail is saying, I know it's the Mail, but the Mail is saying that some of the breakers are Jeremy Corbyn. They have the examples, there are photographs, and Sir Keir Starmer. So you just wonder about this kind of platform of virtue, and whether really anyone that we're supposed to look up to and think is an upholder of the law and is an example to the rest of us was really taking it seriously.
Well, the vote today is about lying to Parliament, and that has happened on serial occasions. December the 8th, there are many, many dates. Every TV interview he did either side, he said all the rules were followed, there were no parties. So lying to Parliament, breaking the ministerial code, is a very, very serious offence. And, you know, let it go to a standards committee. What would the sanctions of that be? In the Owen Paterson affair, remember that one, which is where a lot of these woes stem from.
Yes.
They tried to actually overturn the standard system, but what they were saying to him is a suspension. There's another MP, actually, he's someone I know quite well, Daniel Kaczynski, he had a half-day suspension. So, I mean, and it's a majority Conservative committee. And it's only because a majority of their MPs were tempted to abstain on this motion today. It's pretty mild. It's just asking for an inquiry. Just let's have transparency. Get these things out in the open.
I should say to you, Rupa, that we did contact several Conservative MPs in London. Obviously, that it behoves us to do precisely that. And I'm sure you'll be absolutely shocked and astonished to know that not a single one of them wanted to speak to us on the show this morning. Now, how would you account for that, do you think?
Well, look, I mean, I've got a lot of good Conservative friends and they're horrified and they're getting the same things in their inbox that I am. They meet people on the tube on the way to work, like I do, who are completely revolted, repulsed and astonished at what's going on here. I mean, he just should fess up. He's now run away to India. He was on a plane yesterday telling people he's going to go on and on. This is shades of Thatcher. These people all get delusions of grandeur at the end. They come in with the best of intentions and they go completely crackers. And this is what's happened here. The fish rots from the head. This is the leader of our nation.
On the other hand, do we see much appetite among Tory MPs, many of whom you say are your friends, to oust the Prime Minister, to vote to get rid and choose someone else? And if they were to choose someone else, who would it be?
Well, this is it. I mean, Rishi Sunak for ages was seen as the heir apparent, is now damaged goods. Now we know about his dodgy tax affairs. So I think that's another reason why they want to prolong the agony, because there's no natural.
I mean, on the other hand, I should say the affairs may not look great, but were not actually dodgy, and that you know that, and I know that, and everybody listening knows that. His wife was entitled to do what she did, and nom-doms pay tax in this country. They just don't pay tax on what they earn in other countries. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't avoidance. And then you come on the BBC and say his dodgy tax affairs, and technically they weren't dodgy. They don't appear to be in the spirit of the occasion, but actually it's not right or proper to say they were dodgy, is it?
Tax avoidance and tax evasion should be one of the missions of a Chancellor of the
Exchequer. But they're not the same thing, are they? And you know that. You can conflate them, but they're not the same. One is illegal and one is legal, so you know that.
If it was completely kosher, then she wouldn't have relented, because there's been a lot of U-turns going on.
Well, I don't know if that's fair to say either. It just didn't, as people said at the time, look good. But just because something doesn't look good, it doesn't mean it's illegal. It doesn't mean it's not kosher.
The point is that there's no automatic successor, and they're in disarray. They've been in too long. It's what comes with a lengthy period of office, the arrogance, the hubris.
I mean, this is the other question, though. You say they've been in too long, but if you look at the difference between Boris Johnson's regime and the previous incumbents, I mean, you can hardly compare Theresa May as Prime Minister with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, David Cameron as Prime Minister with Boris Johnson. So it doesn't feel like one great swathe of Tory rule, does it? They look distinct in terms of the different atmosphere, demeanour, conduct and everything else in each different prime ministerial reign, don't they?
Conservative and Unionist Party on the ballot paper in 2010, in 2015, in 2017, in 2019. These are all elections I've contested. So, yeah, you can change the faces at the top, but it is a Conservative administration. Again, that's part of the charade, that they want people to think that they're shiny and new. It is the same government. It's time for a change.
Do you think Sir Keir Starmer is the man to bring this about? Because some people have argued that Boris Johnson's conduct, what's been going on in the party, is a gift to the opposition. It really is like a present with a lovely big shiny bow on it. All you have to do is take the gift and transform that into a government. And some people have said he doesn't have the smarts to do it. He never quite seems to grasp the nettle in the right way, in an engaging way that really gets people behind him. So despite what you would imagine to be an extremely strong position, he's not going to be able to capitalise on it. What do you think?
Well, I mean, we need to look at those election results that the Tories are trying to change the choreography so that this inquiry happens, if it ever happens, far after that. But every opinion poll is showing we're ahead. I was sat behind Keir Starmer 2 days in a row. He was on fire. He's found his voice. Maybe at the beginning it was difficult, because in a pandemic, people want their government to succeed. So there wasn't much opposition. We sort of went along with everything. And also sort of everyone was locked up. He didn't have a chance to go out and see the people, sort of thing. But I think the more people see him, the more they like him. And, he's a complete contrast to Boris Johnson, who's showy and bluster. He's honesty, integrity, probity, forensic as well, the way that he can get to the nub of the problem. Whereas Johnson, the amount of lies, I'm allowed to say it, we're on the radio, not in Parliament, that word is banned in the chamber, that he tells, the way he goes on saying that they're a tax-cutting government when the tax take at the moment is the biggest since 1945. So, Johnson, he's showy, he's a bit of a laugh, whereas serious times demand serious people.
Thank you. Rupa, thank you very much. Rupa Huq MP, their Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton. And I reiterate, we did contact several Conservative MPs in London. Not one of those who responded to our request wanted to speak to us on the programme this morning.